got a story to tell you, man. I talked to this woman this week, Yeonmi Park, and she wrote a book called In Order to Live. She's an escapee from North Korea. And like she had quite the life, man. Like starvation, then slavery. That kind of sums up her life. She had to sell her own mother, whom she loved. I mean, you just think about that for like 15 minutes and see where it gets you. And and she was literally a slave in China. And she struggled through all that, ended up in South Korea and went to a South Korean university. She did all her education in 1 year, elementary, junior high, and high school in 1 year, passed the GED and got into a competitive South Korean university. It's like, this is quite the girl. And her book, it wraps up in 2015. So I asked her about what's happened in recent years. She went to Columbia University. So imagine this girl struggles out of North Korea and slavery and pursues her education and gets to go to an Ivy League school in New York. It's like the pinnacle of her ambition. She was drastically affected by George Orwell's Animal Farm when she was in South Korea. It's one of the first classic books she read, and that's what made her decide to write and to speak. So she can understand the value of the humanities like virtually no one else can. She went to Columbia. I said, well, how was that? She said, it was a complete waste of time and money.
So what's the last 5 years been like since you got to New York?
That has been crazy, as you saw. I've been constantly attacked by these Maoist, Marxist, Leninist people. And constantly, of course, threatened by the North Korean regime. They did everything. They were like, do you remember when Sony made a movie called Interview? The American, they were trying to blow up the movie theaters and hack them all.
I did not hear about that.
Yeah, so the North Korea said if you show that movie in American...
I did hear about that. That's why they moved it, right? Because they were going to release it and then they didn't release it for a little bit.
They were scared. They were going to blow up, create another 9/11 in American soil. So they were all scared. Imagine right now, we are actually, the North Korean dictator can have that much influence on our freedom here. And when he's going to stop, his power is growing and ever, and we are getting weakening in this country. People do not value freedom anymore. They don't care about freedom of speech anymore. And the dictator's power is only gaining more and more in China and North Korea. So, like that, of course, North Korea did everything they could to stop my book getting released with the Penguin Random House. Oh my gosh. It was unbelievable battle that we had to go through to get that book released and be okay afterwards. And it was, that's the thing in America, people think, oh, you can say whatever you want. No, we still have to fight the tyranny to speak our minds. And that's why it's so precious to have freedom of speech.
Yeah, well, good for Penguin for publishing the book.
Yeah, standing up for it. I'm so grateful for them. They could so easily I'm gonna put this off. It's so controversial, it's so much attack, so unnecessary. Why do we do this? But they were standing for their integrity. I think that's really hope that people are brave enough to take that risk.
Have you had any type of positive experience since you've come to New York? Is there anything you enjoy? Well, maybe not at the moment. Are you under lockdown right now?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to be under lockdown right away again. So that's not as much fun. But generally speaking, how do you find New York?
I find people so wonderful in America. I mean, this country is a beautiful country, right? It's just such a, whenever I put my foot on this soil, that I feel this is the land of the free, Despite all that divisiveness in the media and those people in the establishment, whatever we say, I think people are still so wonderful. And what still shocks me is how people Americans hug people and smile all the time. In North Korea, that's a sign of weakness if you smile, because they're going to get you. They're going to attack you. You have to be so always tough and be paranoid. That helps you to be alive. But in America, people are so, whenever I take the photos, they always put effort to smile. And that's that's even more surprising to me. I remember first thing my father was don't smile when you take a photo, because that's the weakness. And here, people can just be loving, be compassionate, be who they are. So yeah, I love this country.
And you're concerned about where it's headed, huh?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's funny, like I went to Dr. Peterson's speech in Chicago like 3 years ago or something.
Oh, cool.
And then back then I didn't get like really resonated much. I was like, oh, I'm sure America's fine. But then I was at Columbia and then I was seeing it in my eyes. And then I also started saying things that wasn't politically correct. Then what happens? Of course, they come get me as well, even though I was actually a slave. Even though
I shouldn't even laugh at that.
I know, like I actually know what it feels like to be a slave. Like it's not like I read in the book. It's not something my ancestors went through it. Like I lived through it. And this summer I was robbed in like middle of Chicago, like downtown. And the 3 Black women, of course, came and they punched me and took my wallet. It was a violent like robbery, but it was like Michigan Avenue. And then I was like, I wouldn't like call them like a thief. I was like, can you wait? I'm gonna call the police so they can resolve this. And then they will go start punching me, and the people on the street suddenly yelling at me because I wasn't a Black. And they were saying like, this color person doesn't make them thief. You're a racist. Why are you doing this? So they held me down so these girls can like run away so I don't call the police on them, so they don't get arrested. And they stole my credit. I know, like they stole my credit card. They spent like $1,000 of like in blooming there. Then police got the footage and caught them. Of course, I'm not gonna prosecute them. I don't even have problems. Like, but the thing is, like, all they could see at the moment was a color. Like it wasn't like what they were doing to me or what we were doing. Just all they could see was Black, and that's why they're supposed to be victims or something. And I'm not, because I'm not a Black.
The people who are after you, like, Marxists, Leninists, are these mostly Americans?
Well, no, they're coming all around the world. A lot of them, in South America, there are a lot of communists and socialists. In Spain, there are tons of people. Brazil, I mean, I'm not sure some people Canada, but definitely a lot from America, European countries. Even in Asia too, like right now, even South Korea have this crazy communist like president who is like putting defectors into prison because they speak, they practice the freedom of speech, right? I think some kind of global trend we are in. All these developed OECD countries falling into this idea of diversity, but not diversity of thoughts, but diversity of what, like whatever it is they call it. Mm-hmm. And they have like zero tolerance for anyone who can think different. And this is not just happening in America, it's happening in Britain, like Canada, it's happening in South Korea, like everywhere I see like it's happening. And that's why I get attacked from like globally.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. You said you went to Columbia, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of degree did you get from Columbia?
I was studying economics 2 years, and then I switched to political science and human rights.
Oh, okay.
And at human rights, you don't learn about Holocaust. Obviously, you learn about it's happening, the oppression that people are feeling right now by white, like straight men.
Oh man.
Right, that's like the human rights you learn. It's not about actually. I mean, like, yeah, it was completely nonsense. The most useless degree I've ever got. And I'm glad I saw it the first hand, because otherwise I would think why anyone in the same mind would do that, right? That's the thing, like I didn't get it. Like, why would anyone in the same mind would do this to others? And I saw in the first hand that people can be this irrational, I think.
Yeah, it's a very scary lesson to learn.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like the people who put us in the gas chambers were other humans. And that's why it was so resonating to read like 12 Rules for Life this year again. I was reliving it after seeing new things and like just new perspective reading. It's like, that's like, I have seen the worst in humanity and I have seen the best like in the humanity. Like trusting men ever again was the hardest thing. Like the first man I was seeing was raping my mom and then me. And constantly being raped by men, and how do I know they're good?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk about that for a second. How on earth did you get through that? Because, there are a lot of people in North America who have some, and like, I'm going to put it out, some mildly shitty experience, whereas like, they both got too drunk and the guy was a dick.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough to leave you traumatized for the rest of your life. It was just a shitty experience, and they end up traumatized for the rest of their lives. Mm. So how do you manage to go through something involving men that's actually traumatizing? and end up trusting them again?
I mean, I wouldn't lie. It's a hard. It's very hard to associate even like intimacy as something positive thing. Every time when you had it was all painful and not something good. Like when I remember when I was being raped, I left my body and believing that's not me. Like I would keep denial about it. That's how insane I was about it. But the thing is, like the perspective again. Like my father was man. Seriously, he was the most loving man I've ever had. And I think being rational and logical is what's missing. People just keep so emotional and they don't think rationally. Like they cannot be like over 3 billion something men cannot be all rapists, right? So it's just when we try to talk about things in the emotional way, how you feel, there's never a way to solve that. Because how you feel really doesn't matter with how things actually work. So I would like rather if thinking about how those rapists made me feel, I think like, let's think about this, like, maybe the guys that I met in China since I was 13, all the ones who was involved in gang and human trafficking, that's why they were guys bad, not because men are bad. But in the beginning, like entire 2 years, every man I saw were rapists, and like, it's hard to believe that men